What's up, workforce? Brian here.
Chris here.
And today we're talking about the state of Endgame and what we want to see in Final Fantasy XIV 6.0. This is going to be a wish list. This is going to be some of the things that we want to see. And of course, we would love to know what you want to see. I want to preface this video that we're not Savage Raiders. And honestly, I don't think I really would want to change that. I want them to make hard content, ultimate content. So this is going to be more of an endgame discussion focusing around that mid-tier and hopefully to help transition more people into being able to do that Savage tier. I guess my initial thought is if you look at the current state, it's kind of a stair step, kind of methodology. Yoshi P's talked about added more difficulties. I don't think that's the solution. And so I'm going to sit down and talk with Chris today about Endgame, the state of Endgame. But before I let him take over the mic for a minute, he is almost 100 away from his 1,000 subscribers on Gaming Kinda. Top link in the description. Let's get him to 1K so he can actually tag Work to Game or Ginger Prime or
I can take you further. If you wonder why you want to subscribe, I have an enormous project starting January 1st.
Yes. So I'm going to let him tease that, and then you'll have to see what happens.
That's all I've told anybody.
I know what it is.
I told Brian because I wanted him to go look at the tags.
All right, so Chris, let's get back on topic. Let's focus here because I don't want to waste anybody's time. I think there's some real ideas bouncing around my head. Yep. What do you want for Endgame for 6.0? Go.
Post-leveling progression.
Okay, what's that mean?
This game is so much about the journey. It's why people get defensive on behalf of people who didn't ask them to be when they do skip potions and they skip over the experience or when they skip over the story. This game, more so than most MMOs, if you take an MMO and you have the progression to catch up, what you need to know about your class and about the lore and all of that, and then you take the end game, most MMOs are very top heavy and they've got this huge end game teetering on this little introduction. And you just kind of shove new players through the introduction. You welcome the end game. They get overwhelmed by all of it. They pick one or two buckets. They focus on those. And the longer they've been here, the more buckets they get to. And once they've gotten to all the buckets that look good to them, they get bored with the game. But hopefully there's enough buckets, especially in these long-running MMOs, that they don't. And maybe they come and go a little bit, but there's always kind of a reason they find themselves coming back. But that bottom section, once you're out of it, you never really go back down there. But with 14, it's very different. You have a lot of jobs to level. When we add jobs, people look forward to leveling them. You go back and we have roulettes that draw us into old content. I still run my MSQ roulette sometimes. There's all of these excuses to go back and do things in the old world. They added flying to the original expansion, which was rejoiced. And there are a lot of games where that just literally wouldn't have mattered.
Yeah.
Like, why would you even go back there? And they did it, and that made people happy. And so I think for that, what's really frustrating is, say you want to engage with me and you want to get better at tanking or healing or whatever, or you just like doing it. Once your tanks and healers are at cap, you really have no reason to come along with me. And so
what about friendship being the reason?
You've called it a glamour level.
Yeah.
We've talked about it a million times. If I could change anything moving forward to the end game, it would be giving us more ways to feel like we're moving things forward. I think there's so many silos of content that I don't have a reason to go run old beast tribes or continue to do my bingo cards or go run roulettes every day. There's all this content. But once experience is no longer a valid reward, a lot of it starts to feel like just an exercise in how can I make an hour go by.
So I love that idea. Obviously, we've talked about it. We talked to Yoshi P specifically about it, and we're calling it a glamour level. Just worry about it like a translation, because when we talk about and what the system is for like Diablo fans, that's a Paragon system. For Final Fantasy XI,
cosmetic.
Yeah.
Ideally, teleport fees, faster mount speed, more retainer slots. Ideally, things that do not affect battle content.
Yeah, and then you have, or from a Final Fantasy XI background, that'd be like the merit point system. But what we've kind of presented the idea is in the concept of something that isn't necessary to do the rates. So like back when I first started this video talking about how we have a stair-stepped tiered difficulty, and in the past Yoshi P's floated the ideas of different steps between what is current and what is Savage based content. I don't want to, honestly, I kind of started thinking about this a little bit differently. And if you guys are familiar with we'll go ahead and actually pick on Outriders. Outriders is a game People May Fly. Square Enix is the publisher, coming out here on February 2nd. So it is not that far away. I've been following this game for a while. Their solution, I'm going to bring up just a Square Enix solution that they have. as an idea here is that I would like to see the mid core and the hardcore, instead of being like kind of that hard stair step, to be more logarithmic in the player expectation. I'm going to talk about myself, and again, this is not a Savage player's perspective. This is a mid-core player's perspective, and I find that difficulty of the normal content isn't engaging enough to keep me wanting just to play it. Outside the experience alone, outside the Paragon levels alone, that experience isn't as engaging once you're geared, and it's not providing that much of a challenge. The challenge then exists in the Savage content. I think that if it was logarithmic, meaning that it would adjust to me on the fly, that would actually be more engaging, so that I could end up finding that difficulty that made everything that exists in the game right now a challenge, so it doesn't get boring fast, but also allowing me to push myself and apply myself. I just today was talking about the DPS meters on Ginger Gaming Radio, and I was kind of teasing that Chris and I were going to sit down and talk about Endgame here, is that in the world of Outriders, like, you level up the world itself. And this is something that I think harkens back to many like Final Fantasy XI players wishing that there was like a hardcore Final Fantasy server in which that every enemy in the open world is a threat to you. You never go alone. And it's that kind of idea that it, like, obviously I don't think that this is something that could be applied on the fly to 14, but the concept that you level up the content, you level up, and you're going to end up finding that right balance for you. This, I think, taps in perfectly to Chris's concept about the Paragon levels, keeping XP relevant. I think you keep content sacred. I think you keep Ultimate sacred. I think you keep Savage sacred. But you could always create that end game, even if it wasn't just glamour, that allowed you to level up into the world itself and then continue to push yourself further and further and further, thus making all the content that existed relevant to the grind and whatever you wanted in that regards, and training you, getting you more used to that kind of content on that kind of smoother scope, that it might hopefully help transition more people from the mid-core into either the Savage tier or somewhere between, to where the game presents a decent challenge, so they're not so easily bored, to where that dungeon just doesn't become a complete cakewalk for you. It's going to provide you some level of challenge. The difficulty here in this conversation is how the hell could we do that within the concept of a multiplayer party game, where if, like, I was on World Tier 10 and you were on World Tier 15, what would that look like? Is there any other games that you could think of that would balance that out that we've seen?
I mean, Diablo already does it, right? You just go into a different torment level when you have a friend who's weaker than you join you, or else they die a lot. You could also easily do this by moving us into carrying our trust with us through the open world. So you could create maybe an endgame zone. Maybe we take the Tempest or something like that. And when you're in the Tempest, you zone in. And then when you go to leave the city there, your party comes with you. And your trust fills out. For that sort of thing to work, though, you would need trust to be mix and match. One of the weaknesses of the trust in 14 right now is that if Brian and I want to play together, then I can't go do trust dungeons at all. It's all or nothing. You're either totally alone with just NPCs, and then you make everything in the world dungeon difficulty. And yeah, over the course of the expansion, we would get geared enough that it wouldn't be a problem, but at least that would add some element of danger. And then if you do have a dynamic leveling system available in dungeons or in trials or whatever, if the way they create half steps is that they create this kind of, or if they have zones to it like they do in Eureka or Boja, then as the expansion goes, we have the ability to survive better. And so at the beginning, it's like, I go into here, and when I have my geared friends, I go into here, and I never go into here. And as the course of the expansion goes, you're like, I never really go back to the first area anymore. But it kind of drags out over 2 years, the reason to be in this one open world zone. That is something that we could have a lot of joy with, especially because, like, you can tie really important lore behind that zone. And so, like the Tempest, for example, there is this kind of teasing of a mystery there that we would have a chance to kind of engage with if we so choose. And so I think there's something kind of nice about that I think Destiny does very well, in like kind of having an opacity where it's like everybody has a general picture, and then a few people are going to go get this other little bit. And what that ends up resulting in, because not everybody wants to go seeking it out, or not everybody wants to clear all content, you end up with this kind of community driven, let's get together and let's share what we know. Let's get together and let's see, oh my gosh, did you see that Ethos went off with his trust and went around and read all the books in that third area. What does he have to tell us? And so like you could absolutely kind of scale that up, but I think it would be best to be confined to its own zone, kind of like how Eureka or Boja is, in that if people don't want to engage with it, it's isolated. If it's a success, then we can learn from it. If it's not a success, we can go, oh, I was just kidding. It's locked away over there. Limited jobs have that same perk, right? If they make a risk with the way Blue Mage engages, and so if they did the carnival, people love the carnival, and all they can do is rant and rave about the carnival. Maybe we should create a carnival type content for other jobs. Oh, people hated the carnival and nobody did it. Yeah, we were just kidding. That was a Blue Mage thing. I was never going to do that for anybody.
Let's shift the subject briefly into kind of the concept of Boja though, because like this is for like I'm thinking like that 4-man, 8-man kind of content,
sure,
in which that all of a sudden you can find that right difficulty level that you don't get bored. It's like you can't just face roll on it, and if you want to face roll on it, you just set the difficulty back to world tier 1, or whatever. Sure. Like I'm using that as a dame. But in Boja, they've got the skirmishes and the critical engagements. I have found that content so engaging to the point where I wish, like you said, yeah, it's kind of isolated over there in Boja. But for 6.0, let's take aspects of it.
Let's take aspects of it.
Exactly. And then the concept though, like where Boja does is it does matchmaking. And right now a lot of people are in Savage and if you're, next time the next Boja step drops, it's going to be, the video is go do it now. Like do it now. Stop.
I don't care if you like it or not. Go do it.
Do it, because you're going to find a time where if you want to, you might be stuck where you're like, not a lot of people are doing it. Anyway.
Yep.
But I want to see those concepts actually brought into the world. And then the question is like, well, if it's an open world and, we've seen it empty to where nobody's really running it, it's not as engaging and fun. And so my hope would be is that the game itself would just pick a zone, and say like this week, this is the active zone, thus giving players kind of a focused nature rather than saying that all zones are all this way all the time. It just like, hey, here's a zone. These things are going to be able to proc critical engagements. It's fun, exciting, and here's a whole reward structure that you could tap into. I think that would
layer it on top of everything else, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Bicolor gemstones can still drop. Achievements for clearing the rare fates can still drop. Mounts, minions, all that stuff can still drop.
Yeah, exactly. And
there's so many other systems in the game. Maybe the beast tribe in the area can proc a critical engagement. Right, so doing your beast tribe dailies helps. Just tie it into stuff, because one of the issues with this game is we have so many beautiful lateral side systems and we forget to use them. So one of the things I like about Boja is that if you don't like Boja, you don't have to do it. You can go do this other side stuff. So I love how the lateral stuff brought life to another form of content that otherwise would have been. So somehow Boja is what brought Heaven's Word Fates back. Like that's a weird statement. So like just the idea that we can recycle old content. This is an enormous game, and taking more things from that top end game and just kind of having more reasons to go back and loop this. This doesn't have to be a typical MMO with Endgame resting on this little leveling content. We can just make it a wholehearted, constant leveling experience, almost kind of like what you see it in free-to-plays, because it's an opportunity for them to ask for your money. And so it's a very frustrating loop, because every time you go back around, you get kicked out the side door, you walk around to the front and they ask you to pay another cover charge. And then they kick you out the side door and you walk around to the front and they ask you for your cover charge. And you're like, how many times do I have to pay this? But in a subscription-based game, that doesn't have to be designed as a money capture mechanic. That can be designed for what's fun, right? Like that can be designed as a, hey, go try any of these 10 things, whichever thing you think is the most fun. Wow, I really like chocobo racing when the queues are instant and there's a lot of other people in there. Okay, well, maybe there's a time when, people can trigger that. I don't know. I would just love, I think one of my long-term complaints about the game is that we create beautiful systems. They develop the first half of them. Maybe they complete them, maybe they don't. And then we never touch them again. Like let's go back. Let's level old beast tribes. Let's level our chocobos. Let's level our alt jobs.
Always be leveling.
Let's play the whole game.
ABL for, limit break and level. But so that's actually kind of like a final thought, a note for me is that when you talk about like the fates for Heaven's Word, like the free trial goes up to that. What it does is it helps like especially new people coming into the community seeing a very active open world. And I think that when we have the biggest like just praise that I can offer the game is it has so much beautiful zones, so many wonderful places to visit. And I hope that we can see within 6.0 more reasons to kind of take what we have and be able to repurpose it for new things and offer a little bit more variety. But I love your idea, obviously, about Paragon levels. I'd love to know what you guys think about kind of world tiers or structuring content so that it kind of levels up with you, so you can constantly feel a little bit challenged when you want to go do content itself. Obviously, I'm not expecting Yoshi P to watch this video and implement everything in for 6.0, but we'd love to know your thoughts, any and all below. Go follow Chris's channel. But for Work to Game, my name's Brian.
My name's Chris.
Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you on our next video. But until then, take care. Got it. I got it from you. Boom. I was just like, I didn't know if you were going to say it. So I was like, I'm just going to keep going. Anyway, love you guys. Bye. What's up, workforce? I don't even know how to do this thing. Brian here.
Chris here.
The dumbest intro.
We're doing it live.
We're doing it live.
Go.
All right. I'm going to redo that. I was just like, wait a minute. Like complete brain freeze.